Good evening, spooky minds of the interwebs. I'm Alexa, the resident nookie spooky girly, and today I'm thrilled to be chatting about one of the top 5 places in the world that I need to visit, Salem. Question for y'all. What's your favorite urban legend? Let me know in the comments, and welcome to the top 5 unsettling Salem urban legends scarier than the witch trials. Number 5, did rye bread cause the witch hunts? According to my research, this is apparently the most common bizarre myth in all of Salem. So ergot is a fungus blight that forms hallucinogenic, fun stuff in bread, causing its victims to appear bewitched when actually they're just higher than a kite. The victims of ergot might suffer paranoia and hallucinations, twitches and spasms, cardiovascular trouble, and stillborn stuff. This particular fungus thrives in a cold winter followed by a wet spring and seriously weakens the immune system. Human poisoning due to the consumption of rye bread made from ergot-infected grain was actually pretty common in Europe back in the Dark Ages. The first mention of a plague of gangrenous ergotism in Europe comes from Germany back in 857, and following this, France and Scandinavia experienced similar outbreaks. England is notably absent from the historical regions affected by ergotism since its main source of food was wheat, which is resistant to ergot fungi. Back in 944, a massive outbreak of ergotism caused 40,000 deaths in the regions of Aquitaine, Limousin, Périgord, and Angoumois in France. The theory of ergot poisoning is that it grew on the rye that the colonists of Salem used to make their bread. The ergot would have had that LSD-like effect that caused the inhabitants to see and hear things that weren't there, thus causing the bizarre hallucinations, which caused over 250 people to be accused of witchcraft. The origins of this legend started in 1976 when Linda R. Caporio wrote a paper entitled Ergotism, the Satan Loosed in Salem. It was publicly dismissed by Stephen Nissenbaum, a historian and co-author of Salem Possessed, and over the years dozens of experts have weighed in and found the basis for this theory lacking in anything resembling convincing. For starters, at the time the custom was for all bread to be served toasted, as Puritans generally believed that untoasted bread caused stomach problems, which would have helped to kill off any ergot that survived baking. Also, one of the most common side effects besides hallucinations was gangrene and necrotism of the extremities. If this was happening during a time when every single instance of perceived witchcraft was being documented, and dozens of people were so affected by this, ergot poisoning that they were having hallucinations, someone would have documented that, the other symptoms were happening as well. And to my knowledge, the other symptoms weren't as common. Number 4, the ghost of Sheriff George Corwin. So while I've done my best to try and leave the witches themselves off of today's list, since I did promise y'all legends that weren't the trials, you might have picked up by now that most of the legends revolve around the history of the trials in one way or another. There's no escaping it, so make sure you're still buckled up and enjoy. Sheriff Corwin was the most infamous and brutal when it came to interrogating and handling accused witches back in the day, earning himself a nickname for his heinous methods of torment. Oh, you want to know what the nickname was? Well, sadly, I'm not allowed to say it thanks to interweb rules, but it involved hands around necks and lack of air. A building called the Joshua Ward House now stands on top of the land where George lived and died, and many people say that they've seen him in the windows or even felt his hands pressing down around their necks when they're inside the space. In terms of lineage, he was the nephew of witchcraft trials judge and witch house owner Johnathan Corwin. He's most famously known for the case of Giles Corey, who endured peine forte dure, or a pressing of stones upon his chest for 3 days, while Sheriff Corwin repeatedly asked him to enter an official plea before his God and country, which Corey had refused to do so in court. According to the legend, George was so sadistic and enjoyed tormenting folks so much that he had a secret dungeon below his home, where he could carry out his fiendish desires whenever he wished. Now that we have the legend part of this out of the way, time to consult the history books for the factual side of things. The actual cases of George tormenting the accused are documented, but are far fewer than have actually been attributed to him. In the case of Giles Corey, who had pleaded innocent but refused to use the official phrasing, likely to delay proceedings and cause trouble for the court and judges that he was furious with, his punishment was technically illegal by the original Massachusetts law. The Body of Liberties Act of 1641 forbade extreme harm, and while the Body of Liberties was officially replaced by the Provincial Charter in 1691, aka the year the witchcraft hysteria began, it was still very much upheld in spirit during this time, and George performing these acts was not seen as appropriate. It may have even led to Governor Phipps, paying more attention to the trials and to disband the court of Oyer and Terminer that he himself had set up. Also, if he had actually had his own personal dungeon for illegal bad things, there would have had to have been multiple cover-ups, and there isn't really proof of that during a time when everything was documented. At the end of the day, there isn't proof he did or didn't, So let me know in the comments where you stand on this. Number 3, tunnels under the graveyard. Honest to goodness, the moment I heard about this as a possibility, my modern brain started to think about all the ways this could be convenient today. Also, being a Disney girl, my brain did jump to the Utilidor system that runs under Disney World. Ooh, and the Toronto Path. Granted, I never really use it unless my dad's visiting and we're like walking around downtown, or if I'm trying to get to Union Station after a convention downtown. Pardon me, I know, off topic. So this legend claims that underneath the old Burying Point Cemetery is a series of tunnels that used to be connected to the Salem harbor. Used for smuggling or simply unloading ships, these tunnels would flood with the high tide. When digging graves, workers would simply open up shafts to these tunnels, and as the priest would ask the mourners to look up to the heavens, they would unceremoniously dump the bodies down these shafts to be washed out to sea. It sounds a smidge morbid and hard to believe, but that's the joy of legends. But here's the thing, it actually has like the tiniest glimmer of truth, like the tiniest, most minuscule flicker. Smaller than Tinkerbell. Originally, the Salem harbor did come close to what is currently the cemetery, until sections of the city were filled in, and there are some tunnels underneath Salem. However, the rest is such complete and utter ridiculousness that historians are adamant it isn't true. But there's only one way to find out. Who wants to go on a road trip to Salem with me to go tunnel hunting? My car has room for plenty of people, trust me. Number 2, the bodies under the witch house. So remember when I mentioned Johnathan Corwin just a few moments ago? Yeah, that's about to come into play again. So when the Corwin house, aka Johnathan's house, was moved back in the 1940s to accommodate the widening of the street, underneath the original hearth were several bones. These were thought to be hidden bodies, and the town was in an uproar over the hidden corpses in the basement of the witch house. And if we're going off of information based on the legend, it would make sense with the whole secret dungeon of George's. This legend actually has the most historical fact behind it, as there was indeed a newspaper article about bones found under the witch house, along with a shocking headline and gruesome photo to accompany it. Sadly, or well, I guess not sadly for humans, just sadly for the purpose of sensationalism, the reality behind that headline is a little more mundane. It was common at the time of building said house, around the 1640s, to bury meat or bones underneath the cooking hearth in order to promote plentiful food for its inhabitants. Even if this wasn't the case, since I know we all like to poke holes into thin theories, the odds of charred bones from various meals over the past 300 years finding their way into the ashes and under added bricks isn't really unlikely. And regardless of their origin, the bones discovered were decidedly not human. Apparently a whole boatload of tests were done. So sadly, unlike the Disney urban legend where we found out that there really are human boats on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, this one might be bunk. As a side note to this entry, there are no official cases of witchcraft trial victims being brought to the Corwin house for examination. While Corwin may have heard original accusations in his parlor, the odds of him being willing to bring an accused witch into his home, with his family and descendants, are astronomically against it. Dang it all though, I like when my theories are right. Number 1, the Seven Gables Secret Stairs. The House of the Seven Gables, which is also known as the Turner House or Turner Ingersoll Mansion, is a 1668 colonial mansion in Salem, Massachusetts, named for its gables. It was made famous by Nathaniel Hawthorne's 1851 novel, The House of the Seven Gables, and is now a non-profit museum. The earliest section of the House of the Seven Gables was built in 1668 for Captain John Turner and remained in his family for 3 generations, descending from John Turner II to John Turner III. You get the idea. Facing south towards Salem Harbor, it was originally a 2-room, 2.5-story house with a projecting front porch and a massive central chimney, but nowadays that portion forms the middle of the house. 4 windows of the original ground room floor, which became a dining room, remain in the house's side wall, and a few years after the original build, a kitchen lean-to and a new north kitchen L to the rear of the house were added. By 1676, Captain Turner had added a spacious front extension with its own chimney, containing a parlor on the ground floor with a large bedchamber above it. Ceilings in this new wing are higher than the very low ceilings in older parts of the house, and it featured double basement windows and an overhang with carved pendants. It was all capped with a 3-gabled garret. In the first half of the 18th century, John Turner II remodeled the house in the New Georgian style, adding wood paneling and sash windows. These alterations are preserved as very early examples of Georgian decor. The House of the Seven Gables is one of the oldest surviving timber-framed mansion houses in continental North America, with 17 rooms and over 8,000 square feet, including its large cellars. So for as long as people have been giving and taking tours of the House of the Seven Gables, the story has gone that the secret staircase of the house was used for just about everything, from smuggling freed slaves through the Underground Railroad to hiding secret lovers for midnight trysts. Sadly, it's just a set of servant stairs. So back when servants were in common usage, these stairs and passages were just as common, since it was considered unseemly for the servants to be in public view. They were meant to be invisible. spiriting into rooms to make them tidy without anybody noticing them. Ergo, hidden stairs and passageways were built to make it easy for them to access areas without meeting the gentry in the main halls and stairs. They're pretty common in older grand places. Locations like Casa Loma jump to mind for me, since they have one behind like a fireplace or something, if my memory's correct. Apparently in recent years there has been some debate over whether the staircase would have been part of the original or later period structure, as it was part of a rebuild by a famous colonial revivalist architect by the name of Joseph Chandler at the direction of Caroline Emerton in 1909. It absolutely fits with the design of servant stairs though, that are seen in many similar structures. And gosh dang, here I was hoping for another home on the same level of spooky as the Winchester Mystery House over in California. Now that's a home with the most random additions with no meaning, all meant to hopefully appease spirits. Funny enough, I think an acquaintance of mine is working there as a scare actor this year. It's a good reminder to touch base with them. And that brings us to the end of our time, and yep, I really need to get around to visiting Salem sooner rather than later. There's just so much incredible history that I need to see with my own eyes. If you enjoyed my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more unsettling content from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.